Is this why there were so many accounts of dust particles everywhere? Just everything had turned to dust, except for some steel?
Even the steel. You look at what's left, and it's not enough to account for the amount of steel in the building. And another interesting thing, when you look at the rubble pile, that's a little bit of a stretch to call it a pile, there's no toilets. None. No parts of it that you can recognize. And they're very easily recognizable. You see a tornado go through someplace, and you see pieces of toilet around. They're shiny, and they're smooth. And
what does that mean?
You should have about 3,000 of them, in the World Trade Center. Something affected porcelain and glass differently. Different materials were affected differently. And the thing that I really got into is the toasted cars. I call them toasted as in they're toast, their history. Something got them. I don't know what happened to them. They're up to a half mile away. And there's eyewitnesses that saw spontaneous combustion over on the East River. They thought it must be a fireball that came, rolling away from the Trade Center.
But could a fireball toast everything in a car?
This can't be explained by a fireball because you have something completely toasted and a nanometer over, completely pristine. And that was the biggest aha moment that told me it was an interference of different types of energy fields. If you think of photographic paper, how you can have distinct differences in boundaries, crisp, high contrast, because you block out the light one place or the other. How can you do that in a car sitting under FDR Drive?
Talk about direct energy. Tell us what you know about it.
Okay, my area of expertise is Moire interferometry.
What is that?
It's an interference of optical energy, and I use that to measure deformations at a very fine level. And in areas where the beams interfere, you get constructive interference or destructive interference. In other words, they add or they cancel. So you can arrange things so that you can have abrupt boundaries where you have nothing or you have, severe effects. And so when I saw this circular spot on a car that was not toasted and everything around it was toasted, except brand new wax job in the back end, front end totally gone. Front door gone, back door, brand new wax job in pristine condition. These abrupt boundaries got me thinking of that. And the reason why I call it directed energy weapons, that's as fine as I'll conclude what did it, is that it's energy that's directed and is used as a weapon. I'm not referring to ray beams from outer space or, anything like that. It's just it's an energy weapon versus that's directed versus a kinetic energy device like a bullet or a missile or, bombs that explode and pieces go flying.
Okay.
That's something that physically hits something.
Well, obviously this we can't see.
Right. And it's an energy field or an interference of energy fields. And John Hutchison, who can reproduce every one of these same effects, uses a Tesla coil or a Van de Graaff generator to create an electrostatic field, and within that interferes some other kind of energy like microwave or some other radio frequency signal. And what is very interesting is I noticed on 9/11, did you know that we had a Category 3 hurricane right outside of town?
No, I didn't know that.
For 4 days it was moving in a beeline straight to New York City. It got there at 8 o'clock in the morning, right outside of town, pulled up to a chalk line, stopped, turned around, and that afternoon headed out of town. Pretty interesting. So I got to looking at, first of all, why didn't they warn the people that you might have flooding? It isn't about the hurricane hitting the town or hitting the city. It's about the storm surges, and, Manhattan's at sea level. Imagine trying to evacuate Manhattan. You might want to give people warning that, like they did with Hurricane Bill recently. Last August, they warned people that they might want to think about leaving, or
right.
It wasn't mandatory yet, but it might be. And then Hurricane Bill diverted off. So why didn't they tell anybody? And why wasn't it on the morning news? where the hurricane was. It wasn't on the weather map. How much did it take to put a pinwheel icon on? So let's see what hurricanes do. And I got to looking at it. Well, people with arthritis talking about feeling a storm as it's approaching. They can feel it in their bones. There's something different in the atmosphere electrically.
Yes.
And then they feel better after the storm has passed. Ahead of the storm, you have an electrostatic field. There's a different amount of ionization and so forth in the air. And at 9/11 at LaGuardia Airport, Newark Airport, and JFK Airport, the three main airports that surround Manhattan, all recorded thunder on 9/11. The outer bands of Hurricane Aaron, which was the largest hurricane of the 2001 season, the outer bands were over the tip of Long Island and right outside of Boston. And I believe it was, raining pretty well on Cape Cod. So it was, not only was it close enough, we have evidence of the dry thunder ahead of a storm, showing that you had this electrostatic atmosphere. So I got to looking at other things, and I discovered that the Earth's magnetic field varied for 20 minutes before the North Tower got its hole. I don't say hit, because that's making a conclusion. Hit with who knows what, before that first hole appeared in the North Tower. For 20 minutes, the Earth's magnetic field started drifting to one direction, and as soon as that hole appeared, it drifted back. And it stopped drifting back right when the second tower got its hole.
How do you know that? Where do you get that kind of information?
The magnetometer recordings in Alaska at 6 different magnetometer stations. And I have that evidence on my website. A better chart will be in my book. But there's a distinct, it's like a chevron. It goes down, and right where within a few seconds, as close as the data gets of when the North Tower got its hole. Matter of fact, there's different reports. The NIST report has some values. Lamont Doherty has other values, and it's I can tell you which one's the closest. It's kind of interesting. The 9/11 report has, and the NIST report has. There's different values, and they're around that same time. Some are more. Some are, they're within a few seconds, plus or minus. Too much coincidence.
If what you're saying is verified and verifiable through all these different spokes or aspects of the forensics of those buildings on 9/11, what does it tell us? What does this mean?
It tells us that, it was a demonstration of free energy technology. I got to looking at it further, and Nikola Tesla had proposed using this technology, but then decided not to because it might be used for evil.
Do you know who owns his weather engineering patents? Raytheon. They weren't going to let him do what he had known.
But within an hour or so, while the body was still warm, they broke into his safe.
I didn't know that.
Freedom of Information request, whatever, they finally unclassified his documents in 1980. It's pretty interesting stuff. One of them, he had a way of protecting the U.S. that you put if the U.S. government had paid for the satellites every 150 miles around towers, like radio power towers, if they paid for those towers at every 150 miles around the perimeter of the U.S., Tesla said he could install devices on each one that would dematerialize any object that tried to pass through the vertical plane.
Wow.
Between those. I thought that was interesting.
Wow. Well, don't you think the powers that be at the highest level already have all that?
Oh, whoever they are.
I mean, I'm saying I don't know who they are, but they know who they are. And for something to be out this long, I'm sure that knowledge is available at the highest level around the world.
Oh, of course. There's something else kind of interesting that I went to get the light I was putting together, and the fellow that was helping me, I was talking to him about this, and asked him if he knew the name Nikola Tesla. No, he didn't. Well, have you heard of AC power, alternating current? Oh, of course. You've heard of Thomas Edison? Oh, yeah, of course. Well, Tesla is the one that invented AC current and is responsible for the fact that we have AC current.